Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're taking a closer look at one of history's really enigmatic figures, the shinobi. You probably know them better as ninja.
Right, and we need to forget the Hollywood version, the acrobat in black pajamas.
Exactly.
Our mission here, if you will, is to get past all those popular myths and really understand who these people were in feudal Japan. We want to uncover some, well, maybe surprising truths about what they did, their real skills, and how they became legends.
Right. Because that's the core question, isn't it? What was the historical reality for someone called a shinobi? And why is that image so drastically different from the pop culture ninja we all think we know?
Mhm.
Okay, so let's start there. Picture this. Someone says ninja. What's the image that, like, immediately pops into your head?
Oh, instantly. You see someone totally clad in black, moving with impossible silence, um, deadly grace, almost like they could appear and disappear at will.
Right, that classic black shinobi shizoku, the full bodysuit, usually shown as skin tight, mask, hood, everything hidden except the eyes. It's the AE look.
It really is. And the abilities people imagine, they're just incredible. Like superhuman agility, parkour before parkour was even a thing, scaling walls like they're nothing.
And vanishing, just melting into shadows or poof, gone in a cloud of smoke. It often feels more like stage magic, doesn't it?
Totally. And it often crosses over from just physical skill into, well, the mystical. You hear about walking on water.
Which is probably a misinterpretation of some kind of tool, right? For swamps or something.
Exactly. Misinterpreting tools like the Mizugumo. Then you get shape-shifting illusions, even controlling elements with those Kujikiri hand signs.
And combat. Fictional ninjas are unstoppable fighters, masters of weapons, deadly even with bare hands.
And the weapons themselves are iconic. That's great bladed sword, the Ninja 2, usually slung across the back. It's almost mandatory in the movies.
Can't forget the shuriken. Throwing stars, they're like the default ranged weapon.
Along with kunai, those dagger-like things shown as super versatile for throwing, stabbing, climbing,
Everything, basically.
pretty much. And then the really exotic stuff adds to the cool factor.
Like the kusarigama, the chain and sickle.
Yeah, or blowguns with poison darts, smoke bombs for that quick getaway, tekokagi claws, kakut rings, kama sickles. It's this whole arsenal.
It really is. And it's interesting how the weapon choice in fiction often signals the character type.
Yeah.
Swords for heroes, maybe knives for the sneakier ones.
It's definitely part of the visual storytelling.
Yeah.
And their roles are always so high stakes. Assassins, elite warriors, lone wolves, or part of these like huge shadow organizations.
Always involved in these intense, action-packed plots.
Absolutely. High stakes missions, dramatic showdowns. It's all about excitement.
Which really points to that rule of cool idea, right? Entertainment value just pushes historical accuracy way into the background. It's about making something awesome, not necessarily real.
Exactly. The goal isn't history, it's thrill. And as our source highlights, that often means embracing fantasy. They become these larger-than-life, almost comic book figures.
Okay, so that's the ninja of pop culture. Let's peel back those layers now and get to the historical reality. And maybe the first place to start is the name itself.
Good point. Yeah, ninja is the common term now, but it's more modern, more westernized, really. Back when they were active, the historical terms were shinobi, or sometimes shinobi no mano.
Which means something like one who steals in or one who conceals oneself.
Exactly, which straight away gives you a different feel than just ninja warrior, doesn't it? The focus is on secrecy, on stealth.
Right. It hints at their real purpose. So when did these shinobi actually become, well, a thing in Japan?
Well, espionage itself has deep roots in Japan, like anywhere else. But the shinobi as these distinct trained agents really came into their own around the 15th century. This was during the Sengoku Jidai, the Warring States period.
Ah, a time of constant warfare.
Constant warfare between all the different daimyo, the feudal lords. So there was this huge demand for intelligence, knowing what your enemy was up to, their troop numbers, their plans. It was absolutely critical.
And this was all happening within that samurai-dominated society, with the Bushido Code emphasizing honor and open battle.
Precisely. But war isn't always fought by the book, is it? There were essential tasks, spying, sabotage, maybe even assassination, that were seen as, well, dishonorable, not something a samurai would typically do openly.
So the shinobi filled that gap. They handled the necessary dirty work.
That's a good way to put it. They operated outside those conventional rules of honor to get the job done for whoever hired them.
And where did they come from? Were they all from a specific social class?
It was actually more mixed than you might think. A lot certainly came from lower classes, peasants, which helped them blend in.
Yeah.
But we also see evidence of Jisamurai, kind of like local gentry and even sometimes samurai themselves taking on shinobi missions.
Really?
Yeah.
Samurai doing shinobi work.
Yeah, especially during the chaos of the Sengoku period, those lines could blur. The lower-rank field agents, the Jinin, were often from lower classes, but it wasn't exclusive.
It's fascinating that the daimyo, the leaders supposedly championing Bushido, were the ones hiring shinobi.
It shows the pragmatism of war, doesn't it? When survival and victory are on the line, ideals can become flexible. Strategic necessity often trumped the code.
Okay, and geographically, where were they mainly based?
The real heartlands were the provinces of Iga, that's in modern Mie Prefecture, and the neighboring Koga region, and what's now Shiga Prefecture.
Why there specifically?
It's quite mountainous terrain, relatively isolated southeast of Kyoto. This kind of geography allowed them to develop their unique skills and maintain a degree of independence. It was harder for central powers to control those areas.
So that isolation helped foster these unique traditions and ninjutsu skills.
Exactly. It led to these self-reliant communities that really specialized in these covert arts. Iga and Koga became almost legendary for their skilled practitioners, though shinobi operated elsewhere too.
But their time eventually passed, right?
Yes. Once Japan was unified under the Tokugawa shogunate, starting the long Edo period piece, the demand for wartime espionage and sabotage just plummeted.
Makes sense. Less war, less need for spies and saboteurs.
Right. Some shinobis were absorbed into the new government's intelligence apparatus, becoming onmitsu, or part of the shogun's own spy network, the Oniwaba.
But others just faded back into society.
Many did. Became farmers, merchants, took up other trades. Their specialized skills weren't as relevant anymore.
And by the 19th century, they'd largely vanished from the active scene.
Which, ironically, is when the legends really started to take off. The lack of active shinobi created space for the myth-making to begin.
Okay, so if they weren't primarily the movie-style assassins, what was their main job? What did historical shinobi actually do most of the time?
Number one was intelligence gathering, espionage. Kancho, teisatsu. They were the spies, the scouts. Their job was to infiltrate enemy territory, castles, camps, whole regions, and find out crucial information.
Like troop numbers, defenses, supply levels, plans, that kind of thing. Strategic recon.
Exactly that. And the key, as historians like Professor Yamada Yuji point out, was usually to avoid combat. The mission was to get the information back. A dead spy tells no tales.
That's a crucial difference. It's about knowledge as the weapon. But they did more than just watch, didn't they?
Oh, absolutely. Sabotage and disruption were huge, weakening the enemy indirectly, destroying food stores, burning supplies, setting fires to cause chaos. There's a mention in the Taiheki Chronicle of shinobi setting fire to a shrine occupied by enemies. They'd also act as agitators, spreading rumors, causing conran or confusion.
So creating diversions, messing with logistics, sowing discord behind the lines.
Yes, and engaging in what we'd call asymmetric warfare. Surprise raids, ambushes, kishu, using unconventional tactics that were definitely outside the formal samurai way of fighting.
And presumably they were good at counterintelligence too, finding enemy spies.
That would certainly be part of it. Protecting their own side's secrets was just as important as stealing the enemy's.
Okay, but what about assassination? That's the big one in pop culture.
It likely happened, but the historical sources suggest it was much less frequent than spying or sabotage. Think about it. It's incredibly risky. Success isn't guaranteed, and it could provoke massive retaliation.
So the idea of them assassinating people might have been more powerful, the fear factor.
Quite possibly. Their reputation for stealth and mystery could be a potent psychological tool in itself. That famous story about Yusugi Kenshin supposedly being killed by a shinobi hiding in his toilet. That's almost certainly legend, not fact.
Right, more folklore. So beyond the military stuff, did they do other things?
Sure. They could serve as bodyguards, especially if discretion was needed. They could be reliable messengers through dangerous territory. And in peacetime, some might have helped track down criminals or maintain order. Tokugawa Ieyasu famously used Iga shinobi as guards.
So it really comes back to information being their most valuable asset.
Definitely. Strategic intelligence, knowing the enemy just like Sun Tzu preached, often mattered more than killing one person. Ninjutsu was deeply influenced by that kind of thinking.
It sounds like they filled this vital, hidden niche in feudal warfare, using methods the samurai code frowned upon.
Exactly. They operated in that sort of negative space of the conflict, using deception and clandestine methods because, well, they worked.
Okay, so if their work relied so much on skill and intellect, How did they train? What was ninjutsu really about?
Right. Ninjutsu is this incredibly comprehensive system,
Mm.
not just fighting. It covered espionage, infiltration, sabotage, survival skills, disguise, psychological tactics, the whole package. Our source calls it an independent art of warfare, using covert means.
So what were the core skills? Let's start with the obvious one, being unseen.
Stealth and infiltration in Cordian. Absolutely fundamental. This meant silent movement, hiding effectively, getting past defenses. It involved climbing skills, using tools, but also the environment, lock picking, even underwater techniques.
Underwater, wow.
Yeah, manuals like the Bansen Shukai describe specific techniques, like hiding among reeds, Ukigusugakur, or curling up to look like a boulder, Uzurigakur. They use ropes, grappling hooks, sure, but also things like mimicking animal calls to cover sounds and just incredible patience.
So it wasn't just about being fast, but being incredibly meticulous and patient.
Definitely. And equally vital was yonin, the art of disguise, operating in plain sight.
Right, blending in, essential for getting close enough to gather intel without raising alarms.
Totally. They had to be convincing as monks, merchants, entertainers, peasants, you name it. Whatever role, let them move around freely. This meant knowing dialects, customs, how to dress, even having the basic skills of that profession. The source mentions tiny details, like putting a pebble in your shoe to change your walk slightly.
That level of detail is amazing. And then the actual intelligence gathering itself, more than just looking.
Oh, yeah. It was about subtly drawing out information in conversation, eavesdropping sometimes, using listening devices like the Sato Hikigain, having good memory techniques, understanding psychology, basically social engineering.
And they had to survive out there, potentially for long periods.
Survival skills were critical. Navigation, knowing the land, edible plants versus poisonous ones, basic medicine, making poisons and antidotes, handling explosives, even controlling their own body odor to avoid detection.
Body odor control, you don't see that in the movies. What about the psychological side?
Psychological warfare was definitely part of the toolkit. Spreading demoralizing rumors, playing on their own fearsome reputation, setting diversionary fires, Hitsuka, causing false alarms to wear down the enemy.
And combat. They must have had some fighting skills for when things went wrong.
Of course. Evasion was always plan A, but they needed self-defense. They likely trained in common martial arts of the time, like jujitsu, maybe some sword skills, kenjutsu, similar to samurai. But their emphasis would be different speed, surprise, escape, using unconventional tricks.
So, less about honorable duels, more about disabling someone quickly and getting away.
Exactly. Maybe using the swords cord, the seijyo for disarming, things like that. Practical and fast.
Where did they learn all this? Were there actual schools? We have those manuals, right?
Yes, the training manuals are key sources, though mostly compiled in the 17th century, kind of after the main era. The Bansen Shukai, 1676, the Shonenki, 1681, the Nippiden, maybe earlier, 1560s. They give us incredible insight.
And they cover more than just fighting.
Way more. Philosophy, ethics, like loyalty, leadership, strategy, detailed infiltration and disguise methods, yonin and entinin again, tool making and use, even astrology, medicine, poisons, explosives. A lot of it shows influence from Sun Tzu.
Compiling them in peacetime, does that suggest they were trying to preserve something that was fading? Maybe romanticizing it a bit?
That's a strong possibility. But the sheer breadth of knowledge shows ninjutsu was fundamentally about applied intelligence, using knowledge from everywhere, psychology, chemistry, engineering for covert ops. Intellect and adaptability were key.
So those amazing feats in stories, more likely clever illusions, mastery of the environment, smart tools, psychology, and playing up their reputation.
That's almost certainly the reality. It was a highly skilled, disciplined profession requiring intense training and intelligence, not innate magic.
Okay, let's talk gear. The pop culture ninja has such specific, iconic weapons.
Right, the straight ninjato sword, the shuriken everywhere, but the historical shinobi's toolkit was generally much more practical, more focused on utility.
And you said the straight sword is mostly myth?
Largely, yes. Historical evidence points to them using the standard curved swords of the time katana or the shorter concealable wakizashi, maybe carried differently sometimes, like on the back, or used unconventionally, hiding blinding powder in the scabbard, using the guard as a step but not a unique straight blade.
What about shuriken, the throwing stars?
They existed, yeah, but not always star-shaped. Could be spikes, needles, flat, multi-pointed discs. Here a shuriken, stick-like, bow shuriken, and probably used more for distraction, maybe disabling at close range if poisoned, a last resort defense, not the primary silent killing weapon from afar like in movies. Some sources even suggest samurai used them too.
And kunai, those aren't really throwing daggers.
Historically, no. They look like a trowel because they likely were derived from masonry or farming tools. Good for digging, prying, gouging holes. An okay improvised weapon, sure, but not designed as one.
Okay, what about the more exotic but real weapons, like the kusarigama?
The chain and sickle, yes, that's historically documented for both shinobi and some samurai schools. Chain to entangle, sickle to strike. Effective, but requires skill.
And explosives and fire were definitely in their arsenal.
Absolutely. They knew how to make and use small grenades. Horokodama, smoke bombs, firecrackers for diversions, tools for arson. The Bain Shinshukai mentions things like fire arrows. Setting fires, Hitsuke was a standard tactic.
Poisons too, presumably.
A key skill. Applied to darts, for blowguns, fukiya, needles, blades, maybe contaminating food or water. And they use other weapons too. Daggers, tanto, bows and arrows, sometimes smaller concealable ones, staffs, bow, weighted chains, manreki gusari, hand claws, tekokagi, spiked rings, kakute, sickles, kama, often adapted from everyday tools.
So less about cool, specialized weapons and more about practical, often improvised or adapted tools.
Exactly. And just as important, maybe more so, was the non-weapon equipment, the tools for getting the job done.
Like climbing gear.
Definitely. Ropes, grappling hooks, kajinawa, collapsible ladders, spiked hand and foot coverings, shuko and shiko. Tools for breaking in chisels, saws, picks. The kunai fits here as a prying digging tool.
What about crossing water or spying tools?
They had things like the Mizugamo, those wooden platform water shoes for marshy ground, or maybe still water inflatable rafts, folding boats. For spying, portable listening devices, sato hikigani, reels of thin line, materials for taking notes like sekihitsu, some pencils, fire-starting kits.
And things for escape.
Caltrops, makibishi or tetsubishi, smoke bombs or powders, metsubushi. The versatile tanuki towel could be used in many ways, and even special quiet footwear, eshiaro.
It all reinforces that main job, doesn't it? Stealth, infiltration, escape. The tools support that, not just combat.
Precisely. Weapons were often concealable, adaptable, multi-purpose. The straight ninjato just sticks in pop culture, maybe because it looks different from a katana, easier prop, maybe. But it's a symbol, not history.
Which brings us to appearance. That all-black suit, you said it's basically a myth?
Yeah, the sleek, black, form-fitting ninja suit is probably the biggest visual myth. Great for movies, but not historically accurate.
So where did that idea come from?
Most likely from Japanese theater kabuki and bunraku. They have stagehands called kuroko who dress all in black to be invisible to the audience while moving props. When ninja characters appeared in plays, especially for surprise moments, they adopted that same black outfit as visual code for stealthy guy. But practically, pure black stands out at night, more than dark shades.
So what did they wear for sneaking around?
Disguise and practicality were everything. By day, they'd wear the clothes of whatever role they were playing, monk, merchant, farmer, performer, whatever, let them blend in.
Makes sense. And at night?
Practical, dark clothing, but not necessarily pure black. Dark blue was a very common dye, dark grays, browns the colors of peasant or work clothes. These actually blend better in shadow and low light. The clothes would be functional, maybe tied securely to avoid noise or catching on things. They might use outerwear like straw raincoats, mino, or capes, kappa, to break up their silhouette or for protection.
What about face coverings?
Masks? Some kind of face covering seems likely for anonymity or protection. Hoods, simple cloth masks, maybe just wrapping a tanuki towel. Some disguises use large straw hats, omigasa, to hide the face too.
So the goal was actual invisibility by blending in, not looking like a cool, distinct ninja.
Exactly. Their real appearance was about controlling information, denying identification. The black suit is just a symbol for the audience, sacrificing realism for easy recognition.
Okay, so if they weren't lone wolves in black, how were they organized? Were there giant secret clans?
Generally, no. Not like the huge, monolithic secret societies you see in fiction. The organization was more localized and based on function.
Back to Iga and Koga again.
Yeah, those were the main centers. Within those regions, they tended to organize into groups, schools, ryu, maybe guilds, often based around family lines or shared expertise in specific ninjutsu skills. Think networks or leagues of warrior families, samurai, specializing in these arts, not big aristocratic clans, though there were other schools elsewhere too.
Was there a command structure? A hierarchy?
There seems to have been. A common model described has 3 tiers. Jonin, upper person, the leaders, strategists, the ones who took contracts and managed resources. Chunin, middle person, the lieutenants relaying orders, commanding teams in the field. And genin, lower person, the actual field operatives doing the infiltrating, spying, sabotaging, often drawn from lower classes.
That sounds like a proper intelligence operations structure, not just random mercenaries.
Right. It suggests organized planning, management, execution for complex tasks. More professional than just hired thugs.
And who did they work for? Loyalty.
Primarily, they were agents for hire, contracted by daimyo or later the shogunate. Loyalty was usually to the employer for that specific contract or campaign. In the Sengoku period, they might work for one lord one year and his rival the next, though sometimes long-standing relationships developed like between certain families and a particular daimyo.
Like the famous Hattori Hanzo and Tokugawa Ieyasu.
Exactly. But Hanzo is a crucial example. He wasn't just a ninja himself, he was a high-ranking samurai loyal to Ieyasu who commanded warriors from Iga province. His men performed vital shinobi-like tasks, famously helping Ieyasu escape after a defeat.
So that blurs the lines again, doesn't it? A samurai commanding shinobi forces.
It absolutely does. It shows ninjutsu expertise was valued and integrated right at the top, not just some separate underworld thing. Other notable figures often mentioned. Momoji Sandeyu, supposedly an Iga leader who resisted Oda Nobunaga, but much of his story is legendary. Fujibayashi Yasutake, the compiler of the Bansen Shukai, preserving knowledge.
What about others like Kato Danzo or Fuma Kotaro?
Kato Danzo, Flying Kato, known more for illusions and feats, maybe exaggerated. Fuma Kotaro wasn't one person, but a title for leaders of the Fuma group serving the Hojo clan, known for guerrilla raids, maybe more like organized bandits.
And female ninja, Kunoichi, like Mochizuki Chiyojo.
Mochizuki Chiyojo is sometimes credited with running a network of female spies for Takeda Shingen, maybe disguised as shrine maidens. But the actual existence and extent of organized kunoichi is debated, often heavily romanticized or exaggerated in fiction.
And characters like Ishikawa Goemon, Sarutobi Sasuke, Kirigakura Saizo.
Goemon was a legendary bandit figure. Sasuke and Saizo are largely fictional characters, probably created much later, who became staples of ninja folklore and pop culture.
So the Hattori Hanzo case really shows it's more complex than just low-class spies versus noble samurai.
Definitely. It highlights the integration of these skills and their value within the existing power structures.
Okay, we've really drawn a contrast here between the historical shinobi and the pop culture ninja. Let's quickly recap the main differences.
Sure. Historically, they were shinobi or shinobi no mano, not just ninja, primary role. Espionage, intelligence, sabotage, not mainly assassination. Skills. Practical, learned arts of stealth, disguise, survival, manipulation, not supernatural powers.
Yeah.
Appearance. Practical disguises or dark, common clothing, not the iconic black suit.
Weapons. Standard swords like katana wakizashi, plus utilitarian tools and adapted items. Tactical use of shuriken, not specialized straight ninjato, and a primary reliance on throwing stars. Organization. Regional networks, family school-based, hierarchical, jonin, junin, jonin, not vast secret clans. Origins. Diverse, including lower classes, but also samurai and even samurai involvement, not exclusively outcast assassins.
That covers the main points. But, there are threads of truth. The core idea of stealth, while exaggerated, reflects their real function. Some documented historical weapons, like the kusarigama, do show up. And real figures like Hanzo provide a sliver of historical basis for fictional characters, even if heavily altered.
So how did we get from that reality to the myth? Why did the image change so much?
It's a mix of things over time. First, their covert nature meant few official records, leaving lots of room for speculation and legend to grow. Their shadowy reputation naturally led to mystification. People attributed amazing feats to them.
And maybe the shinobi themselves encouraged some myths. Good for their reputation.
Very possible. Fear is a weapon. Then, those 17th century manuals, written after the peak, might have aimed to preserve knowledge, but also perhaps codified and romanticized practices, creating a kind of idealized image.
And the theater connection was key for the look.
Huge. That black Kuroko outfit became the visual shorthand for ninja on stage and in art, and it just stuck. Then, in the peaceful Edo period, people got really interested in exciting stories from the warring past. Shinobi became these mysterious, thrilling figures in books and prints. Fictional heroes like Sarutobi Sasuke started appearing then.
And then modern pop culture just ran with it.
Absolutely. The 20th century onwards, Japanese ninja craze movies in the 60s, James Bond introducing a stylized version to the West, then martial arts films, cartoons like TMNT, anime like Naruto, video games, each layer often built on the previous fictional layer, prioritizing cool visuals and action.
And commercialization locks that image in, right? toys, costumes.
Definitely. The ninja became a super marketable icon, detached from history, because the simplified, recognizable image sells. The myth persists because we're fascinated by secret agents, hidden power, the extraordinary. The real shinobi complex, practical, morally gray, are just harder to package for mass entertainment than the action hero in black. The myth was simply more captivating, more reproducible.
So wrapping up this deep dive, it's really clear the historical shinobi were much more grounded, more complex than the pop culture version.
Absolutely. They were skilled, pragmatic, covert operatives. Their main game was intelligence, espionage, sabotage, unconventional warfare, the hidden side of feudal conflict. Their skills were learned, practical, their look was about blending in, their tools were for the job, not just for show.
And they clearly played a vital, if often unseen, role in Japanese history and politics. Figures like Hattori Hanzo commanding Iga warriors for Tokugawa Ieyasu really drive that home.
Exactly. They're a truly fascinating part of that history, operating in the shadows.
So, a final thought for you, the listener.
Yep.
Why do you think this myth of the ninja has such enduring global appeal? What does our fascination with these figures say about us, about our interest in the unseen, the unconventional? And maybe think about what other historical groups might have equally fascinating realities buried under layers of myth and pop culture.